She said she was the only one who could pass on a piece of Dad. Start.
Finding your place in this world can be a lifelong struggle, and that's what we see in this week's episode of This Is Us. So let's break down Season 3, Episode 2 and find out just what happened. Rise and shine on, you lovely people. Lisa here with this week's This Is Us recap, all about a Philadelphia story. So this week's show actually took a pause on all the twists and tear-jerking moments we're really used to on This Is Us. And it did this to help us gain a little bit more insight into the complex problems of each of these characters that have been there since they were young and that we're going to continue to see throughout their storylines. Now that's not to say there might not be some tear-jerking moments for you in this episode, but I would say on the tissue scale it'd be like a 3 instead of a 9 or a 10, which I feel like most episodes of the show have been lately. I was also very excited about this episode because we got the return of Ron Cephas Jones, aka William, and I always love seeing him back in some capacity. But before I move on to breaking down this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet so you don't miss any of my recaps or my celebrity interviews. And as always, high five to those of you who already subscribed. Alright, so it's time to talk about a Philadelphia story. So in our flashback timeline, we see the aftermath of Jack's death. Rebecca and the kids are living in what seems like a small apartment and are looking at new houses to move into, and you can tell they're all grieving in very difficult ways, or grieving really hard, I should say. Rebecca is very much struggling to keep things together, and you could just tell Mandy Moore's performance in this episode is so good because she doesn't really maybe say a lot, but just the facials, you can tell how much, hurt and pain she is in. And with the grieving, Rebecca still even pulls out a coffee cup for Jack, and as they're looking at these new houses, she even hears Jack's voice commenting on various things, and she answers it. Unfortunately, though, Rebecca is ignoring the ways that her kids are grieving as we see Kate really start to binge eating. In fact, she's even gained 25 pounds and never bothered to even send in a tape for her Berkeley callback. And for Kevin, he is now drinking at all hours of the day. Randall actually seems to be the only one who is keeping it all together, which honestly isn't that surprising. I feel like that's what his role's been throughout the show. It seems like that's what he feels like he kind of has to do. That's his job of sorts. But we do get to see that he is super excited because he gets accepted into Howard, and I have a feeling Jack would be really proud about this. We do see Randall, though, confront Rebecca on how she's been handling things and ignoring what she promised she would do, which was take care of them, and she's ignoring what Kevin and Kate are doing to themselves in the grieving process. And I just gotta say that I love Mandy and Niles together in this scene. One of 2 of my favorite scenes in this episode. Now later on, Randall does apologize to Rebecca for lashing out, and she says that he actually shouldn't be apologizing, and she finally starts to open up about how she's struggling with Jack's death. Now, in fact, one of the main things she's been holding on to that's causing her to grieve the way that she is the feeling of guilt, which we also saw Kate hold on to, thinking that she helped kill Jack as well. It turns out that Rebecca and Jack had actually been looking at houses a few months before the fire, and his comments during those house hunting trips are what we actually heard Rebecca hear in the scenes earlier. Rebecca has been questioning what would have happened if the family had actually moved into a new house. They wouldn't have had this house with faulty wires or whatever it was and a fire, and Jack would probably still be alive. But we see that was Rebecca that convinced Jack that she loved the house that they were in and wanted to stay there forever. So you can kind of now understand a little bit more about why Rebecca's grieving especially hard. Later on, we see Randall go to celebrate his acceptance to Howard with his friend Yvette and her family and her son, which goes to Howard as well. I love the fact that we get Yvette again because Yvette is played by Sterling K. Brown's actual wife. So even though they don't have scenes together, it's nice and cute that they're on the same show together. But we do see Randall look over and see Yvette and her husband dancing and all this stuff, and we see him have this vision of Jack and Rebecca and thinking about the whole family dynamic there, and we then see him call Howard University to tell them that he actually won't be attending because he needs to stay and take care of his family, or to be close to home for his family. And I think this is kind of to portray how even at that young age, Randall felt like he had to be the glue for his family, kind of the fixer, which we end up seeing a little bit more moving forward. When it comes to our William flashbacks, we see him meet a new neighbor, a Nigerian woman named Chi-Chi, and her baby Sky. Now, when William first tries to help Chi-Chi because she's moving in and has her hands full, Chi-Chi's very standoffish and kind of blows off his help. But later, William hears the baby crying nonstop, and what does he do? He brings Chi-Chi dinner and sits and talks with her and learns her story. He then invites her to his NA meeting where he's celebrating his 5 years of sobriety, but Chi-Chi declines. However, she does let William hold baby Sky, and you can see some kind of connection here. Now later on, when William is at his meeting, Chi-Chi and Sky show up as he's talking about community and having each other and building their own kind of a family. And we see that Chi-Chi and Sky basically became the closest thing to family William had while he was living in that building before Randall showed up back in his life. So why is this character important? Why is meeting Chi-Chi important? Because she is still very much in the picture, and she ties into present-day Randall's storyline as Chi-Chi and Sky live in this apartment building still, and he goes to see them. So why does Randall go to see Chi-Chi and Sky? Well, you see, Deja's having a hard time fitting in at her new school or finding her place in this new school because, as she says it, a lot of the activities and the school itself are very white. And you know, I kind of understand where she's coming from. I mean, this is why Tess says she stays after school.
Can't. I'm staying after school for TSA.
You doing airport security training?
It's a Taylor Swift appreciation club.
Yeah, that little bit truly made me laugh. Like, no hate to Taylor Swift, because if you know me, you know I'm a huge Swiftie, but just this little part kind of made me laugh. Yeah, I can see why she's having a hard time figuring out where she fits in at this school. So Randall decides to take Deja to the rec center near William's apartment to hang out with Sky, Chi-Chi's daughter. So Sky and her friends are doing these step routines, and they ask Deja to join in, which she seems to enjoy, while Randall sits and talks to Chi-Chi and learns about all the problems with this rec center because it looks like it's just falling apart and no one's doing anything about it. So what does Randall do? He decides to put on that fixer hat again, and he goes to see the councilman to see if there's anything that can be done. And after sharing stories with each other at the barbershop, Councilman Brown promises to send a maintenance crew to the rec center, but you know what? No one ever shows up, so Randall ends up starting to fix things himself. Now, as he and Deja are leaving the rec center, he's talking with Chi-Chi, and she reveals that she sees a lot of William in him, and that makes him smile so much. But then things take a 180 and things sting with what she says next. Where William and Chi-Chi were very much like family and this whole community is a family, she tells Randall that he isn't one of the we, that he basically isn't one of them, because instead of sitting down and getting to know Chi-Chi and the community and talking with them, he chose to focus on the problems that were there and trying to fix them. She then emphasizes to Randall that they are not their problems. Now, we then see Randall look really disappointed because he thought he was helping and, you know, starting to fit in maybe, and he even looks down at his arm like he's looking at the color of his skin. We've seen this before with Randall kind of not feeling black enough with his teenage versions and his younger version, especially when you see him looking at Yvette and her son and that whole family, and then when he visited Howard and looking around. So we've seen it definitely come up many times through the show, and I feel like it's still going to be very much a part of Randall's journey. Now, we do get a little bit more of this storyline at the end of his arc in this episode, but before I can truly get there, I gotta talk about Kate and Kevin. So Toby and Kate are heading to New York for Kevin's big movie premiere, and they decide to keep the news of the IVF to themselves and not let the family know because they kind of know it'll cause a lot of drama within the family. Now, unfortunately, when Miguel goes to get some pudding for a snack from the fridge, Kate's IVF shots fall out because she decided hiding it inside of the pudding would be a good idea. Well, basically this, though, causes the subject to have to be addressed, and as expected, Rebecca voices all her concerns when it comes to the risk and Kate's weight and basically not approving of the whole situation. When they get to Kevin's apartment, the arguing escalates and Kate finally explains why she wants to try and have a baby of their own while Rebecca still calls it irresponsible. Toby ends up having it up to here and snaps, telling everyone that this is none of their business and they already know all the risks. Every professional has told them, and I think it feels like he's just looking for someone to support them. You think the family would. And it's so much for him, like he's been boiling so much that he ends up having to leave to go calm down and says he'll meet them at the premiere. When Toby is late to the premiere, Kate starts to freak out because she needs to do her IVF and it has to be on this schedule. But Toby missing in this, crucial moment ends up leading to a very beautiful scene, my other favorite scene, with Rebecca and Kate. Rebecca ends up volunteering to give Kate her IVF, which means that they end up having to kind of have this intimate scene in the bathroom where they finally air things out. And Rebecca apologizes for not doing something for Kate when she started gaining weight back after Jack died, and how basically after Jack's death, Rebecca began to worry even more about her kids, and the thought of anything putting them in danger or harm paralyzes her. So that's why she's so hung up on these risks of IVF and Kate and not being as supportive. But we see her turn around because she does tell Kate that she'll understand when she has kids of her own. Now, Kate also decides to take a little bit of the blame for all this stuff and how she could have made better choices back after Jack's death when she was almost 18 and started to do all this eating and, wallow and grieve the way that she did. But ultimately, Rebecca helps Kate give her shot, and it's just a beautiful moment between Rebecca and Kate. And, whenever we get to see Kate and Rebecca finally kind of mend their relationship and get on the same page, I feel like it's a beautiful moment. Toby does eventually make it to the premiere, and, well, Kate says that she's never seen him blow up or snap like that, and he quickly attributes it to jet lag. But we all know that he is still hiding the fact that he has stopped taking his antidepressants, and this is just a symptom of that, as well as his fidgety legs. So we'll see just how long Toby can hide this secret. As for Kevin, he is really into Zoe, but she still wants to keep things very casual, so she's not going to his movie premiere. She's blowing it off to go work on her documentary in Chicago. And while Kevin says, yeah, I get it, cool, we can do that, you can see a little bit of hurt in his eyes, like he does want something more here. Now, as Kevin's movie premiere gets closer, we see he's starting to panic a little as he kind of has this dream where Kate's crying during the movie premiere, and to his right, Jack is falling asleep. Yeah, like this sense of disappointment, like Jack is like, nah, you're not doing a good job, dude. We also do get to see some more flashbacks of teenage Kevin drinking his way around the school and eventually finding himself on the auditorium stage. Now, during Kate and Rebecca's fight at Kevin's, Kate expressed how she is the only one who can carry on a piece of Jack. And of course, this upsets Kevin because you're thinking, wait, no, because they're both biological children, they could both do it. So basically, it's like saying Kevin isn't serious, like no one takes him seriously enough that one day he could actually have kids and things. And being taken seriously is the issue weighing on Kevin's mind throughout this episode, which he does finally express to Kate at the premiere when she apologizes for saying that to Kevin. You see, Jack never got to see Kevin act, and Jack was always the hardest on Kevin and the only person who took Kevin seriously. So now that someone has given him this shot to be a big, serious actor, Jack isn't there, so Kevin kind of feels like he's got this weight on his shoulders to really prove himself and to be taken seriously in order to kind of do Jack justice. So will the other people, will the audience, will everyone take him seriously as an actor after this movie? Well, we actually don't get to find out in this episode, but Kevin does smile a bit when it comes to his relationship with Zoe, as Zoe watches an interview of Kevin on the carpet where he's like, he's single, and it kind of seems to stir something up in Zoe, and she sends him a text about when she's returning, and yeah, Kevin smiles because he sees that she really does like him a little bit more than she lets on. Alright, and well, this fight and talk about Kate being the only one to pass on a piece of Jack brings us back to Randall, who is trying to find his place in this world. Just as you think, as Randall's finally starting to kind of go back up after kind of that conversation with Chi-Chi, he's proud of his brother being at this premiere and he's enjoying himself. Kevin starts to fill Randall in on what he missed that day, the fight, and how he wants to be taken seriously, and how Kate said that, she was the only one who could carry on and pass on a piece of Jack. And this is the thing that stings Randall. His face just does, his expression from a smile immediately to a sad frown in a matter of seconds. You see, Randall is pretty flabbergasted Kate would say something like this. So now we have Randall truly questioning where he fits in. The community where his dad grew up and people that look like him just told him he's not part of their we. And now with Kate saying that whole thing about being the only one to pass on a part of Jack, he feels like he's not even part of the we with the Pearson family. And I get that Kate, in the heat of the moment, was just thinking about, the concrete details and how physically, like genetically, she and Kevin are the only ones who can pass on a piece of Jack. And since Kevin doesn't seem like he's ever going to have kids, she would be that only one. But you gotta remember, there's more than just the physical and genetic things about passing traits on from a person, or maybe not traits, but qualities of a person on. Randall has many of Jack's great qualities. He's very caring and smart, and he loves to take care of people, and that's some of the stuff that he is definitely passing on to his kids, and how he feels like he has, passed on Jack's legacy. But hearing that from Kate, no matter how much he believes that he is passing on parts of Jack, just hearing that Kate has said that just really, it cuts deep, and I totally understand it. So now we have Randall caught in the in-between of where he fits in. You know, he's not necessarily black enough, but also not white enough. And honestly, it kind of goes to show that no matter how old you are or how much you think you have things figured out, you can still come across these times of not fitting in. You know, a lot of times you feel that when you're younger, but even as an adult, you can really feel this. And I actually kind of really relate to this storyline. And you know, I myself am adopted. I grew up with a white family, you know, and while I never had to deal with a lot of the struggles Randall has when it comes to, you know, being treated differently, there's still certain mindsets that I created myself about looking around and being like, I don't look like these people, or if I went back to Korea, would I fit in? Would they think, you know, I'm not Asian enough of sorts? And I kind of get that. And so I think just the overall feeling of not fitting in is the part of Randall's story here that will really kind of resonate with a lot of people, whether it's about race or gender or, you know, sexual orientation or whatever it is. I think a lot of people can see themselves in what Randall is going through. And that's what I love about the show, is that it doesn't matter what character, whether you look like them or not, whether you come from exactly the same place that they've been, there are certain things that you relate to, and it really makes you stop and really think. And that's what the show, I love. It really makes me, every time I watch this show, I really kind of sit back and think about what just happened on the episode, what these characters are going through, and what I can really learn from it. But you're tired of hearing me ramble, right? So I'm going to stop, because that pretty much wraps up the main events of this episode. We still have Toby struggling, being off his antidepressants, Kate and Rebecca coming to an understanding when it comes to the IVF. We have Kevin worrying about what people will think of his acting and if they'll take him seriously, because he wants so much for other people besides Jack to take him seriously. And Randall, he's still trying to figure out his place in the world. And I am excited to see all of these storylines play out this season. But let's go ahead and take a look at the promo for the next episode.
Kev, you're a freaking movie star!
Your father's a veteran, so were you able to draw on his experiences?
One of the biggest mysteries of This Is Us begins.
How can I know so little about my dad's time in Vietnam?
And a dangerous procedure becomes a life-changing experience.
There is no way in hell you should have a baby.
What are you guys talking about?
Okay, in that whole thing, I am really excited to see all three Kates in the same scene. I loved when we had Randall kind of tripping out and seeing Jack, and we had a little bit of Kevin and Jack in the same scene in this episode. So whenever you get to see these actors that are in different timelines be in scenes together, even though it's usually like a dream or something so out there, it's kind of fun, and I love that so much. And it also looks like Kevin did get good reviews for his movie, so this ends up setting up, you know, him doing these interviews, having to realize he doesn't know much about his dad's past, about Jack's past, especially when it comes to Vietnam. And we saw in the flash forward from the end of season 2 that he and Zoe will be going to Vietnam, and we're going to learn about Jack's time there, and we'll get to meet Jack's little brother, who will be played by Michael Angarano, who I've been a big fan of for a very long time, so I'm excited to see that part of the show and that storyline open up. But now it is that time for you guys to hit up the comments. Let me know your favorite parts of this episode. I truly loved the 2 scenes that I mentioned, and also seeing William back, so hopefully he'll come back a few more times. Maybe I love learning more about his story. But if you could see other actors on the show who don't normally have scenes together, who would you choose? Let me know all your thoughts and theories about what you think will happen, what you want to happen. We didn't really touch on the mysterious her in this episode, but do you have any new theories about that? Let me know in the comments, and then you can click right over here for my recap of the latest episode of my new favorite fall TV show of the new shows, Manifest, or my recent interview with Lily Reinhart and Elle Fanning. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thanks so much for hanging out with me, watching me ramble, and I will see you next time.